Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Bruce McDonald, and this is the Talamanca Review. It's 10:11 p.m. on July the 2nd, 2024. And I just wanted to do a broadcast and just mainly talk. I don't want to do one on Stardust Ranch. We'll get back to that. I'm going through the chapters and trying to do something a little bit more organized there. But I feel as though I need to be inspired a little bit to do these things. And, you know, the world is incredibly inspiring for a podcaster now. So that's what I want to talk about. Now, the title of the podcast is Damned If I Know, because I don't have a clue what's going on right now. And nobody does. Okay? And I mean nobody. Not the people who observe, not the news people, not the conspiracy theorists. I don't even think the insiders know. I don't think anybody knows. This has got to be one of the most fascinating dynamics I have ever seen in my life. From the age of about 25, I have been able to successfully predict almost everything that's going to happen in the world. And it hasn't been hard. I'm not talking about very specific things like, you know, the price of stocks going up or something like that. Or I certainly wasn't able to predict Bitcoin and things like that. Otherwise, I'd be a millionaire now. But what I mean is, let me just check if the stream is live. I don't know if it is or it isn't. I think it is. Hang on a sec. What I mean is... Yeah, it is. Let me just check. Yeah, I caught myself right when I went to check it too. Sorry, I'm just kind of getting used to this going live thing, so you'll have to bear with me. But what I mean is, for the first time in my life, I don't see anybody running the show. And in the past, you've always been able... So I figured out in my mid-late 20s that if I wanted to know what was going to happen in the next year, the next 3 years, or the next 5 years, that all I had to do was read the quarterly publication put out by the Council on Foreign Relations. And this was generally distributed in bookstores. This was before the internet. I suppose, yeah, before the internet. So this, you know, would have been when I got back from Taiwan in '94. I would have been 28 years old. Now that threw me for a bit. You know, being an expat, being an immigrant in another country, it can throw you a little bit. It can throw you off, and it takes a while to reorient when you come back. You're not as tuned in to what's going on in your society. Now, that's a good thing, though, because when it does all come back into place, you see even more. Because every time you travel and go abroad and live abroad and learn another language and eat another food and live in another culture, you grow. You grow tremendously. And I suppose you could say that this is a privilege that we've had in the first world, the traveling gentleman, you know. And I guess, you know, the British Empire was famous for that, you know, the well-traveled man. The vast majority of people in this world, like over 90% of the people in this world, never go much further than the place they're born. And that's the simple truth of life. Half the guys I grew up with are still living in Ottawa, and still living in the part of Ottawa they were raised in, East End, West End, the Glebe, or wherever they were raised in Ottawa. Most of the people I live with here on the mountain have maybe been to San Jose, which is 2.5 hours away, and that's it. You know, you can't just go and move to another little town in Costa Rica if you're not born there. Foreigners can move there. You know, we get a pass because we're not from Costa Rica, but you cannot just go around in other countries and move around. Villages and people organize themselves around families and roots. This is the way most of the world lives, and it's a very rare privilege, and I'm deeply grateful for it. Gracias a Dios, thanks be to God, for the ability to move around the world, because I consider it to be my greatest education. I consider it to be the equivalent of a doctorate in something. Something unnamed, you know, political science, cultural studies, anthropology. But you get really smart when you live abroad. So I've done it twice now. I lived 2 years in Taiwan, and now I'm about a decade in Central America. And you remember everything about every place you've ever lived. You can't really forget a place you lived for a couple years or more. Beyond the age of like 15 or 18. It just becomes an indelible experience and a part of you. And therefore, the well-traveled man is an excellent observer. I was considering doing another podcast tonight, and I'll briefly mention what I was considering doing. I was considering doing a memorial to Gonzalo Lira, who died about 6 months ago, almost exactly 6 months ago now. In the custody of the Ukrainian authorities for breaking their law, which was publicly justifying the invasion by Russia. Was a brilliant broadcaster and just one of those guys who could get in front of his cell phone and go for an hour and get 40,000 people to watch him within 3 or 4 days of publishing. He was erudite, he was informed, he was traveled, he was also another worldly man. He was a Chilean American. I have friends in this game who podcast and do radio shows and go on YouTube who think he was, you know, somebody's inside man or something. And there's a point at which I think you have to stop the paranoia and be realistic and stop being a goof and just say, you know, the guy was really telling the truth and they killed him and he died. Not like, oh, he's an agent or he's an operative or this sort of nonsense. And it's an affectation of people who stay in media and broadcasting too long. They get this sort of callousness, this 3 inches of scabby skin on them emotionally, and they don't feel right. And feeling is the better part of intelligence. So if you don't feel right, you're not getting things right. Now, the counterpoint to that is that we are manipulated through our emotions more than through our thinking. So I get the emotional defense, but at a certain point of practicing that emotional defense, you end up becoming just like them. So I just wanted to give a shout out to Gonzalo Lira. I mean, I would really like to hear, you know, what his thoughts are on what was going on. I think he'd say the same thing as I'm saying tonight, which is damned if I know. So let's go through this crazy world that we're living in, and, you know, the world that can no longer be predicted, okay? I would almost feel more comfortable if the things that Klaus Schwab and the WEF said had more certitude around them, like they happened, okay? And this is what started to happen around the COVID time. Is there was this transference, I suppose you would call it, like a transference of authority from Washington and London and Rome, which had been the 3 pillars of Western society. And then these amorphous and really unknown and undefined entities started popping up, and generally in a certain geographic area. So the Netherlands, Belgium, and Switzerland were the 3 places that all of these global institutions started popping up. And I got to know Belgium quite well, working with Corinne Hustebot and other people on The Devil in Us. So that was, you know, one way of seeing the world. But I was told that, you know, pretty much everything All the global institutions were moving in there. But they don't seem to be in control because their plans don't seem to be working. So I was thinking about this, and I was thinking, well, why would these plans not be working? And one of the reasons they might not be working is that the leaders can't affect what the global authority wants upon their populations. Okay? So I think that the pandemic was part of this. It was part of a social reconditioning, mass formation psychosis, as some of the medical minds out there have said. That may or may not be true. I don't know. I'm not a doctor, nor am I a psychiatrist, and I think you all know my opinion of the latter. But there seems to be this resistance, and the societies aren't going along with it. And you got to wonder, I was wondering if they thought maybe they could do it just with the status. Okay, so you need a stick and you need a carrot. Okay, the stick is the punishment, the carrot is the reward. Now, in the straw man system we live in now, the birth certificate system we live in now, the reward is your life continues. Your paycheck continues, your benefits continue, you pay your mortgage, you pay all your bills, your kids can go into their various sports leagues, and your wife can be happy, you can be happy, and that's the carrot now, okay? The stick is you lose that, okay? And a lot of people have lost it. I mean, this woke thing has taken a lot of people out in the last 3, 4, 5 years. But the problem is they cannot get this consolidated. In the past, when they wanted to move something forward, there was an element of legitimacy to it. And what I mean by that is you could think about it and you could go, yeah, this could work. There's a possibility it could work. It's not completely ludicrous. So let's go back to my favorite topic of free trade. When you were looking at that in 87 and 88 and 89 as a North American, long time ago for you kids who are, Gen Z or millennials, you can't remember this, but it was when the global structure started to come in. The first phase of it was regionalism. And regionalism was effected by creating trading blocks in which, for commercial purposes, borders came down. Goods could come and go between people in these trading blocks with no tariffs on them. And you got to understand the old world before free trade. This is the time when countries were really countries. And if a leader wanted to protect a certain industry in a country, like automaking, they incentivized their population to buy domestically produced automobiles by putting high tariffs on the imported automobiles. Okay? So if in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, if you wanted to own a BMW, well, it still is quite expensive. That's a bad example. But like Honda and Toyota and the Japanese manufacturers, they got into our market by building plants. So they didn't necessarily have free trade deals with us, but they came in and they stimulated our economy by providing thousands of jobs. And for doing that, our governments gave them the right to sell those cars into our domestic markets. Now, if somebody didn't want to do that and they wanted to sell their goods in your country prior to free trade, there was a very high likelihood that a high tariff would be put on the item. So some of the things that have been consistently had tariffs put upon them, let's say in the U.S.-Canadian relationship, is softwood. Okay? We still have softwood disputes in the free trade agreement between Canada and the United States because lumber yards and woodcutters in the United States want to sell their wood, and Canada's really good at wood production. We've been doing it a long time and kind of a lumberjacking people. And so we would sort of dump all this, and we have a lot of wood. I mean, we're a huge country, right? And we would dump this wood into the American market. And remember, this is another thing you learn when you travel. Nobody but us in North America, I can't speak for Australia, I don't know, but they might be the same. But Canada and the United States are the only countries in the world that that build houses with wood frame and gypsum and insulation, and then a brick facade on the outside. Okay, so just the brick goes against the press board, and then it looks like a brick house, but it's really just a brick facade, right? So everything is decorative now. But we build our houses we frame them with 2x4s. We use 2x10s for the floors, for the floor joisting. And then we put 3/4 inch press board on top of the floors, and then whatever you're going to do on top of that, you do. In between those 2x10s, we put insulation. We put the roof on the bottom of the 2x10 and the floor below it on the first floor. And that's it. That's how you separate one floor from another floor. And that's how you build walls in these homes, is you stick frame with 2x4. And then you put gypsum. And you run your wiring in between. You put your insulating in. It's very straightforward. It's almost like adult Lego. It's very easy to do. Everywhere else you go in the world, they build with brick and mortar. So they build with cinder block, and they build with concrete. Okay, so there's a lot of bricklaying or what you would call a concrete block laying over here. And then over here they'll put a veneer over it, like a 1/4 inch of some kind of lime putty or something like that, and then they'll paint it, and that's how they build houses over here. And one of the reasons is they don't have the wood we have in North America. I mean, we had one of the largest treasure troves of material in the world. So there's always been this thing with hardwood, okay, between America and Canada. Now, one of the interesting things about the place I live now is Costa Rica is a nation. It really doesn't have free trade with anybody. Now, there's good things about this and there's bad things about this, okay? So, for example, most automobiles you buy in Costa Rica have a tariff put on them when they're imported. Now, this is what economists would call a punitive tariff, because Costa Rica doesn't produce any automobiles on its own. So there's no domestic market to compete with. So why are they putting tariffs on automobiles? Well, the reason is a lot of the Central American, well, I shouldn't say that. I can't speak for all of them. And in fact, now that I think about it, it's not true. You can get automobiles much more cheaper in Nicaragua or Panama. They're about double the price in Costa Rica. And it's because these tariffs and taxes they put on the imported automobiles, they carry right through into the secondhand market and affect the price of vehicles that are even 20 and 30 years old. You know, I have a 30-year-old vehicle. I have a Mitsubishi Montero with a turbo diesel engine, which is much newer than the 30 years. It's a fairly new engine, and I just put it in. And I mean, I could sell that car for like $10,000 US, which is ridiculous. Okay, it's a 30-year-old car. In the US, I might be able to get $1,500 for the vehicle, maybe $2,000. Okay, but it's just that this auto market carries over because of the tariffs. It's very interesting the way it works. So regionalism began, and then we started to have political leaders that would say, well, we can't do that because we entered into this agreement. And this was the beginning of what I call the global deferral. Okay, so you no longer had absolute accountability in the capital city of your country. The leaders were able to stand up and say, well, we signed the free trade agreement, so we can't protect this industry anymore because it would violate the free trade agreement, and we would be taken to the tribunal by our trading partners, the United States or Mexico, and we would lose because we're in violation of the agreement. And here's the agreement. It's online. You can read it for yourself if you want. But the point is that for the first time in the history of nations, in North America, leaders after 1989, when free trade came in, were able to say, they were able to defer. They were able to say, I can't do that, and here's why we signed this deal. Now, oh, thank you, Feminim. What a strange name. Okay, and so we can't violate this signed deal. And then if you follow from that period onward, you started to see more and more of this in politics. Okay, this was the beginning of a much bigger divide between the left and the right than just simply how much money the government spends on social programs and what people can do with their genitalia. And that's the cosmetic difference between the left and the right. Okay? But the fundamental difference between the left and the right has always been fiduciary and autonomy. Fiduciary meaning the treasury, because liberal governments are more socialist in their leaning, and they use much more of the public funds in the treasury for social programs. And the conservatives, who get portrayed as the evil ones all the time, Justin Trudeau's famous for this. You know, he's running a campaign now against Pierre Poilievre, the leader of the Conservatives, and Pierre Poilievre wants to take your child at a daycare. Pierre Poilievre doesn't want seniors to have their teeth fixed because the Liberal government is introducing a free dental program for seniors. Okay? So this was the classical divide. And the first people, in my opinion, okay, the first people to start using the deferral clause, meaning that they blamed their decisions not on an unwillingness to do it, not on an unwillingness to please the people domestically in their own populations who were asking for it. They did it because they couldn't violate an international agreement they signed. Now, most of these agreements when we started were all about trade. Free trade started the whole thing. Free trade started globalization. But then they started to concoct more and more global issues. Okay? Now, some are real. Okay? Now, so going back to my thesis that when they used to present something to us, there was, if you were a reasonable person and you looked at it, you could say, yeah, that might work. Like, you could look at free trade in 1989 and go, that could be beneficial for our nation, depending how it's applied, depending how our government stimulates the economy, depending what we do with this opportunity. For example, in the original free trade agreement, what we as Canadians do with the opportunity to sell into the American market. So you could reason it out. Now, as time went on and we entered into more and more of these global agreements, astute observers began to clue in, some of us earlier than others, that it was all horseshit, that it was all leading to global governance. Okay? And then came all the environmental stuff. You're a monster, you're a baby killer, you're a river killer, you're an earth killer if you don't sign the Paris Accord. Paris Accord was complete bullshit, but the amount of emotional wind they were able to get into those sails was absolutely mind-boggling. Okay? Flash forward to where we are now. I cannot, for the life of me, figure out Joshua. I cannot for the life of me figure out where this is going now. You know? So it was always one way. So my father and mother could always predict what was going to happen politically because, you know, my dad retired in 1992. His last real assignment in Canadian government was related to the free trade deal with the United States. And he just went off into 25 years of perpetual golf, 12 months a year. Florida when it was too cold in Canada, and Canada when they were home. And he kind of stopped following politics, but picked, not completely because you can't, but he got more interested in the last 5 years of his life because he started to catch on to what was going on. So it used to be you could just read certain publications, and if you were in the know, they would just sort of let you know, okay, this is what's going on, and this is what's going to happen. And you'd go, yeah, they're always right. And that was usually some affiliated publication, some publication that was owned by the think tanks or owned by the group of people inside the nation who were really making the decisions, okay? And so in the United States, this was the Council on Foreign Relations. And while the United States was the loudest voice in terms of projecting what was going to come in the political future of the West. You could, from 1995 to like 2015, you could almost always gauge what was going to go on in the world just by reading the Council on Foreign Relations. Okay? Because they telegraphed everything. You know, if they wrote an article on some economy that wasn't accessing and bringing to market their resource properly, like say Venezuela with its oil, for those in the know, it was nudge nudge, wink wink, we're going to invade Venezuela. Okay? And it was very, very, very predictable. Okay? And most of my life, everything has been extremely political. Extremely predictable in the political world. There hasn't been what I would call a lot of inconsistencies. And I mean, just once you clued in to what the lead dogs were in the media sled. So imagine the media is a chain of huskies pulling a sled through the snow. The lead dog directs. Okay. So once you figured out who the lead dog was, you always knew which direction the sled was going to go in. Okay? So this was like the Council on Foreign Relations, the Bilderberger Group, and then somewhere in the early 2000s, these other voices started to come in. You know, you get Alex Jones coming onto the scene, you get the proliferation of the internet, you get a massive divestment of occult insight into what's going on in the world at an occult level. You get a massive expositions on certain things. We're introduced to mind control, Transformation of America, Kathy O'Brien. That's somewhere, but I think before 2010, she published that book. She started doing interviews on Google Videos prior to YouTube and all of these sorts of things. And all of this other body of information built up. But it never amounted to anything other than a dog barking in the rain. You could still read the lead publications like the Council on Foreign Relations, like Chatham House in Britain, and you could fairly well know which direction the society was going to go in. It was not hard to predict. Now, damned if I know. I mean, nobody knows now. This is what I'm saying. And this is why it's so scary. It's like that scene in Batman, The Dark Knight with the Joker, Heath Ledger, where, he's talking to Two-Face. He says, if you tell people you're going to blow up the bridge on Wednesday, nobody panics because they have a plan. They know what the plan is. But you take away that plan and everybody loses their mind. And he's right. Or Christopher Nolan and his brother who wrote that screenplay were right. Very smart guys. I still can't figure them out, the Nolan brothers, Christopher Nolan, the director, and his oftentimes co-writing brother. I don't know where those guys are coming from, if they're being fed information, if they're clairvoyant, if they're Masonic initiates. I can't figure it out, man. But they're so cutting edge, right? Right up until, this latest mind-bending film that they did with Denzel Washington's son about time warping, and Kenneth Branagh as just the brilliant Russian bad guy. I'm sorry, I can't remember the name off the top of my head now of that movie, but it's worth watching. But you could always predict what was going to happen. Now you can't. Okay, so here are the pictures. Here's what I want to talk about tonight. This first 30 minutes was just me getting warmed up. Okay, so who's there? There's Joe Biden. Now, in most of the time I've been alive, they would have taken Biden out. Now, if they're not, what do we know? Okay, so how do I put this? If the Council on Foreign Relations doesn't have a clue anymore, and they don't, if the stuff the World Economic Forum is saying isn't happening, if the stuff Yuval Harari is saying isn't happening, if the stuff Brussels and the United Nations are saying isn't happening, what is happening? How do you know what's happening? Okay? You can't. If nobody's telling you, you're not really going to know. There isn't a psychic on the planet. I don't care how powerfully clairvoyant they are, who could tell you what's going on right now. And I think, forgive me for getting so woo-woo, but I think the God force has come in and just muddied the waters. I don't think anybody can see it. I don't think anybody can see this. I don't think anybody can understand this. And I think a lot of people are really afraid. Okay? If you're, let me tell you something about these people. I've spoken so much about these elites, these controllers, their satanic minions, their ritual minions, their occult minions. They're cowards, man. Okay? They're sadistic. They like inflicting pain on other human beings. They like torturing people. But only when they're in absolute control and they have no fear that their prey could get the better of them. I don't think they have that security anymore. And I think they're terrified because deep down they're cowards. You have to be a coward to be a Satanist. Okay? The whole reason you become a coward is you don't have a Satanist is because you don't have the courage to live. Okay, sorry, Satanists. You got to take your bruises like everybody else. I don't play favorites. So there are still some ways that we can kind of figure out what is going on. Okay? Now I'm going to give you one of my theories, okay? The American establishment wants Trump to win this election. Now, if they want him to win the election, why have they put him through all the stuff they've put him through? Why have they tried him? Why have they convicted him on 34 felonies? Why did they make a martyr out of him? And they have made a martyr out of him. Even people who don't like him, you can now hear them commentating like, yeah, this is a bit excessive. This goes against everything that I believe in a fair and equitable justice system. The guy got railroaded. People who don't even like him are saying stuff like that now. Okay? So they've made a martyr out of him. And so the system in what they want us to believe, in their zeal to stop this guy, they have created a martyr and basically exploded him in the polls. He's going through the roof in the polls. Like, Biden does not have a chance of winning this election. Okay? So who's behind it? Because nobody is writing about it. The Council on Foreign Relations is lost on this topic. All of the think tanks in the United States, conservative and liberal, are lost on this. Okay? There's nobody telling us what's going on. You kind of have to figure it out for yourself, if you can. And I'm not sure that people can. You can just maybe guess, which is what I'm doing tonight, because damned if I know. Okay? Damned if I know. Let's look at it from the Democratic perspective. What would possibly be holding that Democratic machine up from replacing him? Well, I'll give you one theory. Joe Biden has never really been running the country. The Joe Biden presidency, I believe, and you can call me paranoid if you want, you're not going to hurt my feelings, I believe it was Barack Hussein Obama's third term. I believe that little quip he gave a couple of years ago about, would you like to be president again? Yeah, but only if I could do it from my basement and not get out of my sweats. I believe that he was telling the truth. Okay? You can see it at the Democratic meetings where he shows up. I mean, Biden looks like a lost little kid. He's got all the power in the room. But the one thing I do know is whatever is going on in that Democratic Party, Joe Biden does not have the power. You can tell just by how he's treated at meetings. Okay? He does not have the power. So if he doesn't have the power, who does? Well, my contention on this podcast tonight, damned if I know, is it's Barack Hussein Obama. But I give myself the liberty to change my mind in the future if I want to. As early as tomorrow, by the way. But I do give myself the right to change my mind about this because there's no way to know. I'm just a guy throwing spaghetti against the wall on a live stream on YouTube. But I think it's Barack Hussein Obama. Because when you think about it, that's the only rational reason I can come up with for why they're still running Joe Biden, because nobody else in the democratic system would allow themselves to be Barack Hussein Obama's proxy. Okay? So it's Barack Hussein Obama who doesn't want to give up the power. Okay? And everything Biden has done is the Obama initiative. And the Obama initiative was to bring us into this global alignment. Whether he believes it, whether they've told him the truth about what it really is or not, I don't know. They could take him into a room and say, look, America's been a great country, you know, but there isn't enough land in the world to do this for everybody. So the way you guys had your land grab 200 years ago, we want to move more to a socialist/communist system globally. How do you feel about that? Would you like to come in on that and work with us globally? Well, you know from my Punks Are the Children of Prostitutes podcast that he's a communist. So he would definitely bite on that hook, okay? Now, whether that's what's going on or not, I can't really say. But what I am saying is that Barack Hussein Obama, everything I've seen Biden do is like a third term of Obama, okay? And it's completely and utterly in lockstep with the other punk in Canada, Justin Trudeau. Remember, both the sons of radical communist fathers, and in the case of Trudeau, it's both men. The man who raised him and paid his bills, which was Pierre Elliott Trudeau, and the man who sired him, Fidel Castro. They're both radical communists. We know that Obama's father was a radical communist. Both of their mothers did pornography. Hence the title of that podcast, Punks Are the Children of Prostitutes, which that is the etymology of the word, by the way. In the old Oxford Dictionary, if you looked up punk, it would be Old England. It was the child of it was the bastard of a prostitute. So a child born out of wedlock and born to a prostitute. Hi, Mike. Thing is, Bruce, AI is their weapon. I don't think they're as weak as you think. Yeah, I'm not sure about this AI thing, man. You know, I don't see it. I don't see it. Is AI out there? Is it operating? Yes, it's absolutely operating. Okay, but is it doing all this? I know a lot of people think it is. I have friends, very, very smart friends, who've worked in the military, who've done some incredible things, who also share your opinion, Joshua. But I do not. I do not. It's not AI. I don't think AI is that evolved yet. I think the AI narrative is kind of a red herring. First of all, what can AI do other than control a nation that is completely controlled by computational systems and networks? Now you could say, well, Bruce, we all are controlled by computational systems and networks. Okay. You know, you could make the case with me that it was a form of artificial intelligence that created 2007, the subprime mortgage fiasco. I would say that might have been AI, because when you look at all the people who were interviewed, the brokers didn't have a clue. I mean, they should have. They should have known that those mortgages, those bonds, were not AAA, that they were junk. But nobody did the research until that one mathematician in Wall Street did all the work from the movie, right? So I do not believe AI is running everything. I think that's just a cop-out, okay? That's just, you know, you can let yourself off the hook for having to think about these things if you blame it all on AI. Okay, anyways, let me get back to my thesis. But thanks for commenting, Joshua. I appreciate that. Joshua did not appreciate my China commentary at all. China is in ruins, Joshua. Okay, their own people are going to be turning on Beijing pretty soon, just like the American people are turning on Washington. Okay, so if the plan is chaos, okay, just pure chaos, and out of that chaos they're going to yoke their new order, that might be it. Okay, would they be using AI to create this chaos? Absolutely, 100%. So, but this would certainly also help explain why you can't see anything now. Why editorial boards who like Council on Foreign Relations with their quarterly 4-time-a-year publication aren't telling us what's going on now because they don't know because the AI is doing it. I could buy that, sure. Yeah, I can definitely buy that. But the AI isn't leading us anywhere but chaos. Okay? And I don't think it's going to last because everybody's going to figure out what I figured out, which is that there's nothing going on here. It's like nothing is making sense. So Biden is Obama. Okay? They've made a martyr out of Trump. Now, the one thing I think we all agree on, AI aside, is the level of control in these systems is like 98, 99%. And it's been that way since the 60s and 70s. Well, heck, man, let's go back to the 1947 chapter in The Devil and Us, and let's say it's been this way since 1947. Since the OSS converted to the CIA, since Pandora's box was opened, whatever it is, this portal to hell, this portal that brings in the demons and the extraterrestrials and connects our realm, this space we live in, with all this freaky shit out there that has been growing and growing and growing every decade since 1947, or basically since we exploded all those nuclear bombs. Okay? So they've been in control since then. Okay? And this is supported throughout the decades with competent research by many people, not least of which is the recent book in the last 3 or 4 years called Chaos, the Charles Manson story by the Vanity Fair reporter O'Neill. Phenomenal book. I've read about half of it. That's just one decade. And Manson was definitely connected to intelligence agencies, not as an operative, but as a patsy. They use more patsies than operatives. Okay? And they're all pathological liars. I have no idea why people are watching this Andrew Badamaste, whatever his name is, this former CIA guy making the rounds and all the big podcasts now. He tells you right on the podcasts, CIA operatives are pathological liars. The moment somebody tells me that, and they were a CIA operative, I stop listening to them. And so, if they're still 98, 99% in control, we can deduce that there's a reason they're leaving Biden in, that they don't want the Democrats to win, and that there's a reason they're making a martyr out of Trump, because they want him to win. Okay? Now, when you get past that, you ask yourself, what's happening to the general emotional state of the population? Okay? So a human population, especially since we urbanized and we connected through telephones and radios and then TVs and then computers, it's become increasingly easy and increasingly difficult at the same time to control people and to control the collective mind. Okay? When you go back to before 1947, there was nobody who said this war is unjust, going over to World War II. With all the books that have been written on World War II now, we know it was another bullshit war. We know World War I was a bullshit war. Just complete and utter bullshit. As much as bullshit in what happened and who was behind it as Ukraine is a bullshit war. As this thing between Russia and the United States is bullshit. Okay? So why did that generation accept it? And why was anybody who would not go and fight for that cause deemed to be cowardly? Okay? Well, it was just a different time. And the nations like Canada and the United States, they had the hearts of their citizens. Okay? And after that war from 1947 on, what happens is the relationship between the heart center of the population and the government just keeps separating. Okay? Now, I will tell you right now, this is the state of most countries. Okay? But even given that, they're still patriotic. Okay? So the Chinese people know their government's always going to fuck them. They know. Okay? Because it's been happening for 5,000 years through the emperors, through World War II, and then on into the communism led by Mao Zedong out of World War II. They've always been fucked. Okay? Power has always been absolute. The oligarchs in China, the warlords in China, always take what they want, which is well in excess of what they need, even for 3 generations going into the future of their families. But it's just to do it. It's the way the Chinese do things. And the Chinese have always known it's bullshit. So, the Chinese threat, the Chinese threat. I don't have Xi Jinping up there, so I shouldn't be talking about China, but I will throw in this one caveat. Do you guys know that the Chinese military invented a helmet for its soldiers? The helmet. So if the soldier doesn't follow his orders, they can remote control kill him in the field. Does that sound like a people you should be afraid of? Right? If the human heart is the source of all strength in the world? Does that sound like a people you should be really worried about? I'd be much more worried about Russia at this point, because their heart's in the game. You see those people interviewed in Moscow with the English subtitles at the bottom. I don't think they're bullshitting. I don't think they're cherry-picked out of a bunch of haters. Like the way they find people to speak positively about North Korea with Kim Jong-un. So why would they want Biden to lose? Why would they want Trump to come in? Ask yourself that. Let's just go with my thesis, okay? They want Trump to win. Why would they not just give him a second term? Why would they not just have him go from 2020 to 2024 and finish the Trump mission? I don't think in the history of the United States this has ever happened, where someone won a term, lost the next election, and won the third time to finish their second term. It's never happened. Doesn't happen. Okay? It's happened in Canada. It used to happen with Justin Trudeau's father. He would sort of leave politics, people would lose favor with him. He would lose favor with the population, kind of disappear for 3 or 4 years, and then come back for another election. Because there's no limit on the number of times you can run for prime minister in Canada. We don't have a 2-term limit in Canada. So it's a very, very different system. So Bruce, how do you feel about all the Chinese military in America? Where is the Chinese military? Are you talking about the people coming over the southern border? Are you talking about the Michael Yon reporting, the former Green Beret who's been down at the border? Are you talking about the Brett Weinstein reporting, the evolutionary biologist who went down to Darien Gap and talked about the 2 streams of people coming up, those who look like legitimate immigrants, and then this Chinese flow that seems to be handled by what they call snakeheads over there, or professional smugglers? Well, if they're soldiers, they're soldiers. What can you do? I mean, it literally means your government is arming them. So the armory for those peoples, the Kevlar, the helmets, all of their tactical command is all being done by your government or agents of your government. Okay? Is that plausible? Fucking right it is, if Obama's really behind Biden. That's exactly an Obama move. Obama fucking hates America. He fucking hates it. Okay? Just look at his body language. Okay? He fucking hates it. And he's a sociopath to boot. His father was a pornographer and his mother was a whore. You think that makes a normal fucking psychology in a person? And he got put through Harvard by a slush fund from Saudi Arabia? And he's born in Kenya? Yeah, that doesn't sound too good to me. And it's even worse up in Canada. I'm sorry, I can't follow all the comments, okay? I should open the phone lines. I wonder if I could take a call now. I probably could. But anyways, let me finish my thesis for tonight. Damned if I know, okay? I don't believe the tension between the United States and Russia is real. I don't think there's going to be any nukes exchanged. I think that's all just ramping up the tension. But why are they ramping up the tension? Okay? And if the AI is running things, whose AI is it? Who has AI now? Has Russia developed advanced AI? Have we seen any humanitarian voices coming out of Russia talking about the dangers to the human race over AI? No. They're all coming out of America, right? All the big voices talking against AI are coming out of America. The former executive at Google who worked on it. Elon Musk is sort of against it. A lot of the computer scientists going on the podcasts like Joe Rogan and Lex Friedman are warning about it. Some of them are saying it's too late. But is it just us that have it? Or who has it now? Are there AIs fighting each other? Or is there just one AI? Is this like the Entity in the latest Mission Impossible movie, Dead Reckoning? I don't know. Maybe one of the reasons I don't buy the AI is I live in the rainforest and everything's natural and organic where I live. I don't know what it's like to live in a big city anymore. I'm sure AI could manufacture synchronicities. I don't know. Maybe I'm lost on this topic, but I don't think so. You know? I don't think so. It's like when people talk about the digital ID and there's going to be no more paper money. Have you guys been out of the United States or Canada? Have you traveled? In most parts of the world where people live rurally, they don't even have bank accounts. Everything's done on paper. Could they bring in policies to change that? Absolutely. Modi did it. Remember when Modi said he was going to recall all those big bills in the rupees? There was I forget what it was, like 100,000 rupee note or a 500,000 rupee note. Like it equates to about 500 or 1,000 US dollars. And a lot of Indians kept their money at home under their mattress. They didn't use banks. And what Modi did was he said, we're going to take these bills out of circulation, so if you don't get them into a bank or you don't spend them before this date, the serial numbers are going to be taken off the market. You're not going to be able to spend it. So they can always get rid of money, even in the most primitive of places. Like, you know, and I'd say about a third of India lives on the street. If you've never been there, it's quite a spectacle, man. Quite a spectacle. A third of them are homeless. So it's not like they're walking around with ID, right? They can't really do anything. So they need paper. They need a simple system of barter, and their economy is 24 hours. And that's another thing that North Americans don't understand because they don't travel and live in other parts of the world. A significant portion of the world lives on a 24-hour economy, meaning every day you wake up, there's no guarantee you're going to get 3 meals. Okay? You live on a 24-hour economy or a weekly economy. Okay? But this thing about living month by month, so if somebody says to me now, I'm just getting by month, based on what I'm seeing going on in the world, that's still a luxury because most people are getting by day or week by week. Right? And a single lost week of work can necessitate asking other family members for money to help them. Okay? So what's Putin doing? You know, so here we are. Now, put all the pieces together. And remember, don't distract me with China or AI or any of this shit. Just stay with the 3 guys in the picture there, okay? They said this guy, the Orange Man, was the buddy of the guy below him, Putin, and that the Kremlin owned the Orange Man. And then when the senile old guy from the Democratic Party, Obama's puppet, got into power, they manufactured, and it was a manufactured conflict. There was nothing organic about that. They wanted to agitate Putin, okay? They manufactured a conflict with Putin. And we have thrown billions and billions of dollars at this now, at a time where we need our money domestically. We don't have the money to be throwing it at a war effort. So there's number one, they're throwing money away. So if you ask me, Bruce, what's that about? That continues the plan of weakening the United States, which is the Obama agenda, fitting into whatever globalists he's working with, which would probably be the Klaus Schwab people and the UN people and all of those people, right? Because he's a UN kind of guy. He's born in Kenya. That's a UN country. Let me tell you something. The UN has a lot of power in the world. You just don't think it does in America and Canada because you had in the past the economic clout to go tell them to go fuck themselves. Other countries don't. United Nations ruled on a land claim by the Bribri natives in Costa Rica in like 2018. The ruling came out, and the Berber Indians were given a whole swath of land that had been colonized by Spanish farmers, Costa Rican farmers, since like 1945, 4 generations. And they all had to pick up and leave. They had to leave their homes and get off the land. It created so much tension in this country that the native leader who instigated the court case at the United Nations shot 5 times and killed. This happened in like 2019. He got shot and killed. That's the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. Now, why wouldn't Costa Rica step in and say, fuck you, we're not going to follow that, the way the United States does every time the United Nations tells them to do something? Because they don't have the clout. Because most countries in the world need the United Nations. They need the security of it. They need good standing in it because they're not big military powers. They want to be, in a rational collective of countries. And to be in that rational collective of countries, you have to follow the orders from the authorities of that rational collective, including the courts of the United Nations. Okay? This is the world to come, by the way. And I believe that Barack Obama believes in that order. Everything he did while he was in power suggested to me that he believed in that order. So the senile old dude gets in for 4 years, which is coming to an end. He starts a beef with Russia, okay? And he blows up the Nord Stream pipeline, incapacitating the most productive country in the European Union, Germany, thus demoralizing the entire European economy and incapacitating their ability to pay their mounting debts, which is another form of external leverage. Debt is an external leverage. The people you owe money to, the institutions you owe money to, can leverage you. Okay? This is what happened to Greece in like 2013, 2014, Greece and Cyprus. Mass suicides. I don't know if you guys remember that. You gotta now this may be the AI. If there's AI working out there, I could definitely see it working in a way that the intensity of the engagement of your attention on a daily basis, a weekly basis, and a monthly basis, the massaging of those cycles is so efficient now that nobody can maintain what I would call a contextual critical perspective. Like, let's look at this since Greece and Cyprus. Let's look at this since free trade. Let's look at this since Biden got in. Because there's so many micro emergencies happening right now. There's so much end of world stuff happening right now that most people are just like a horse with blinders on. They can't see past it. So this dude comes in for 4 years and starts a beef with Vladimir Putin. Orange Man gets dragged through the courts, humiliated. And in a world of pedophiles and child rapists, he gets castigated for banging a porn star. Okay? Like, it's ridiculous in context to the world in which these people live. I mean, look, cast your mind back to that freaky dude with the hammer who ended up in that quasi-gay sex scenario with Nancy Pelosi's husband at their home in San Francisco. Okay? These are the people calling that guy, the Orange Man, a degenerate for banging a porn star. It's Crazy Train, man. It's Ozzy Osbourne, all aboard. Hence the title of the podcast, Damned If I Know. Okay? So the only thing I can come up with is that they're going for chaos. They just, the only way they can get themselves, they can't map a clear course through this. So now the game is to burn everything down, however that needs to be done. Internal domestic violence, race violence, gender antipathy between the genders, the many genders in the West now, and external threats like the pseudo-threat of Russia. While very real things are happening, like the very specific depopulation of Ukraine. Okay? Now, who would want the Orange Man in? And I think the antipathy toward him is not entirely staged. I think there are powerful forces of hatred that have tried to decimate this man, Donald Trump. Just absolutely decimate him. I'm not sure he deserves it. I'm not sure he doesn't deserve it. But from what I'm seeing right now, he's really no worse than anybody else in power, right? So, or in power in the last 25 or 30 years. He's just more of a stranger guy. You know, he's just a weirdo, you know, coming out of nowhere. A condo builder from New York with mob ties comes into American federal politics. And then you got Putin, who has, I would say, been very reserved in not taking the bait that Biden has been laying out. I think Biden wants to get his own country nuked. I think you're broke, America. I think Canada's broke, and that's why they want to kill all the old people. Anybody over 65 is afraid to go into a hospital now, unless you're very well off and you have a private insurance package that would guarantee you can select your doctor, you can select the institution that will do your operations. But if you're just going in ad hoc now and you know, doing luck of the draw, everybody I've talked to who's had a hospital experience over 60 in the last 3 or 4 years says, I think they're trying to kill people. Okay? Now, it may sound a bit paranoid, you know, but this is what I'm hearing. And there's a lot of people podcasting about this now. Why would they do that? Maybe because they don't have your Social Security or your Canada pension plan? Maybe because they've spent all that already? Okay? Which would be kind of evil when you think about it, because in the last 30 or 40 years, people have done significant jail terms for getting into disputes and losing them with the Internal Revenue Service in the United States and the Canada Revenue Agency in Canada. And people have had to do 2, 3, 4, 5 years in prison, had all their savings taken, you know, because you didn't hold up your end of the social contract. You didn't pay your taxes. And now it comes time. This is really the first generation cashing in on these extravagant social programs in any big way in the United States and Canada. And here I'm talking about the baby boomers, and the response is to start killing people, offer medical assistance, and dying. You see how crazy this is all getting? Damned if I know. Okay? But one thing I do feel fairly certain of, whether it's AI, whether it's just pure chaos at this point. It could just be the chaos of no clear leadership in the world. And I can only think of one force in the world that might be able to steer things in Trump's favor. And that's the Zionists. Okay? And they're a global force, and they have trillions and trillions of dollars at their disposal. You're dealing with people like Larry Fink. You're dealing with the Adelsons from Macau. You're dealing with the richest of the rich and the Jewish mega-rich. And they want their Jerusalem, and they want their temple. For whatever reasons. I don't even think they're religious. I just think it's like a game of touch football now, and they want to score a touchdown. Okay? For some of them. For the darker ones, they have different designs for the temple, as far as I'm concerned. But that's who's backing Trump. And they've got more juice still than this Democratic alliance, okay? Which is a very, very strange alliance. There's another strange thing. Throw this into the damned if I know category. For the first time in American history, there's a open rebuking of the Israeli agenda. And the anti-Semitism slur is not working anymore. They've gassed that out. It doesn't work anymore. You can call somebody an anti-Semite till you're blue in the face. It just doesn't work anymore. They've spent it all. The credit card is maxed out. Whatever equity of emotional and compassionate equity they had as a result of what they went through in World War II is gone. They've spent it all. And right when they're at the goal line, isn't that interesting? Right when they're at the goal line. Okay? These are the things I notice. Okay? So, what the hell's going on? I don't know. And I don't think we're going to know till November. And I think November is just going to be complete chaos. Now, is there going to be some big fallout on the US dollar? Again, I don't think so. And my reason for saying that is nobody trusts China and Russia. Even if they have gold-backed currency, nobody gives a shit. And you know why? They don't produce anything. They don't create. They don't invent. They don't stimulate the economy. They don't take us forward. Who the hell wants to follow them? So they haven't really won over any hearts and minds. But then again, do they have to win over Western hearts and minds? Or is the plan to kill us? That case could be made. Okay. I can tell you one thing. The easiest solution to this whole problem would be for the 5 or 7 countries, as I mentioned before, the Five Eyes and 2 or 3 other select European nations that want to join us, like, Italy, Portugal, Spain, France, 4 nations plus the Five Eyes. There you got 9 countries. Basically, let's call that Christendom. Okay? So the Five Eyes are New Zealand, Australia, Canada, United States, and the United Kingdom. They formed a intelligence sharing alliance, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 years ago, and they call it the Five Eyes. Okay? Take those Five Eyes countries and add the 4 European countries I just mentioned, and you would have the most powerful economy in the world in terms of innovation, production, manufacturing, quality of production and manufacturing, and all of those things. And we could literally tell the rest of the world to go fuck itself, and we would be so far ahead of them in 20 years they wouldn't be able to catch up. Begging the question, why are we even going through all this shit if our own leaders aren't in on our own demise? I think even Trump's in on it to a certain degree. But I think the last little drop out of the Western rag they want to get in the United States is getting Israel over its goal line, to get its needs met in that region of the world so it can go into the next epoch as a major, major player. Anyways, that's about all I got for you tonight on the Damned If I Know podcast. I'm Bruce McDonald, and this